Hi, my name is Kevin. You can see my name back here. I'm a third generation artist. My artist name is Ye Hao Bai. Hao means endless and Bai means white. Again, mentioning that I'm a third generation artist, it all started with my grandfather, Ye Cui Bai, which means drunken white. He was a general in the Republic of China Army for the cavalry unit, and after his retirement, he wanted to be able to paint the horses. He came across a painting from the Song Dynasty where he saw this really long, unbroken stroke that he drew inspiration from, and then, funnily enough, all of his horses, he would go to this, I guess it was like a horse ranch, and he would see all the horses, and they always felt very static, even though they were, sometimes they'd be running around, but a lot of times they were just standing. And he wanted to give them a little bit more dynamicism, and he attended a performance of Snow White on Ice. And as he saw the skaters kind of gliding across the ice and spinning through the air, he decided that he wanted his horses to also have that same level of freedom and kind of fly through the sky. The second generation was both my uncle and my father. My father's name is Ye Fei Bai. So Fei is fly, so his name is Flying White. He incorporated a lot of the things that he loved into the paintings. So he loved hiking, he loved camping. You can see a lot of motifs in nature and in the mountains. And then he also incorporated a lot of sort of dynamic angles from his cinematography background. So in this case, you can see horses are kind of jumping over you. Coming over here, this is one of my earlier works. I'm still on my journey, kind of learning the techniques and mastering them. I think my role in all of this, as we move into an age that's becoming more digital, we have AI creating art now as well, is to really kind of preserve some of these techniques that I've learned and make them available for the next generation. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about some of the tools of the trade. There's only 4 of them, so it's really simple. We have the brush. Brushes have different compositions. They can be, wolf hair, they can be goat hair. Wolf hair is a little stiffer, goat hair is a little bit more supple. A lot of the different techniques you'll see here are going to utilize the different properties of that. I actually have a hybrid brush here, which has both wolf and goat hair, so I get some of that structure from the stiffness of the wolf hair, and then I get the suppleness from the goat hair to allow me to do some of the more dynamic strokes and some of the more dynamic washes. We also have the Xuan paper, which is named after the county that this paper was invented in. This has a high level of absorbency with the water and the ink, so it'll pull the ink down and hold it really fast very quickly, but also allow the water to bleed out a little bit, which will give you those really nice washes that you'll see. We have the ink itself. Traditionally, this is actually a replica inkstone. It's plastic, but traditionally you would have an inkstone that someone would painstakingly grind with an ink stick. We're not going to do that for this demonstration because that would be the entire demonstration. And then finally, you have water, which is, it's just water. It does things that water does. So kind of what you can see here is we will often dip the water, and that helps me control sort of the moisture level of the brush. And that dilution there will also change and give you those nice gradations that you'll see. So yeah, let's get started. I'm just checking the concentration of the ink. Generally start with a dry brush in the beginning. That gives me the cleanest, crispest lines. As we go on through the painting, the brush will pick up more and more water, and then that's when I can start doing the shading more effectively. There's a couple of anchor points that I usually stick to. The most important is the eye. One, it gives the horse life and expression, but it also helps me determine how big the head is going to be, what position the head is going to be in, and then from there, the rest of the body can flow. Now it's super important when painting the eye that you leave a little bit of the light in there. That's sort of the light reflection. The horse looks like a dead fish if it doesn't have that on there, so always something to keep in mind. I want my horse to be kind of looking upwards. It'll be looking at its companion, so we'll go ahead and tilt its head up a little bit as well. Actually, this horse will be calling to its companion, so we'll have its mouth open as well. I'll kind of build the horse out piece by piece, so I'll be shading it as I go along. So we're going to come to the second anchor point, which are, I think it's the elbows of the horse, or maybe it's knees because it has 4 legs, but that'll help give me sort of the motion of both the chest as well as the torso. So this horse, I'm going to be having it sort of galloping forward, so to speak. I guess it's flying forward, but reaching forward, so to speak. And so this will be the, I'm going to assume it's tricep. I'm not super well versed with horse muscle anatomy. That's the elbow itself. I've been moving fairly slowly with these strokes, and this is now where we want to start adding some of the dynamicism in with the brush. So we'll hold it for a little bit and then quickly move it downward, close out its leg, and then we'll give it a hoof. Should have just a bit there. Give it a second leg. All right, so now that we have the 2 legs of the horse, I can generally see where its body is going to be. Go ahead and start filling those in. This is where I have to take my time a little bit to get the correct dilution of the ink itself. You're not actually going to really be able to tell until it fully dries, the variations of them, but you can get a general sense of it just by blotting it on a piece of paper and look from there. So we'll go with the back. This is going to be our 3rd anchor point. 4th anchor point, I think I used 2 legs. This will be its hip. This is going to generally give you the direction of where its legs are going to be. So in this case, I want its back arching back a little bit. And so I've done a more angled brush stroke. It's still fairly dry, so you can kind of see it break apart here. This is what we call flying white or fabi. That's where the bristles of the brush will split apart a little bit, and it'll allow some of the paper to show through. We'll be utilizing that technique a bit more when we come to the mane and the tail, because that'll give it sort of that motion and wind through its hair. we'll start on its leg. Okay. So, generally speaking, horses have 4 legs, but in this case, to keep it from crowding the composition too much, I don't want to paint like a full 4th leg, so we're going to paint the suggestion of a leg to give it the fullness of a 4-legged horse, but not have it also crowd everything within the composition itself. Alright, so here we can get into some of the more fun stuff, at least in my opinion, the more fun stuff. We're going to do its mane. So something that I learned after I grew out my hair a little bit is that your hair will move with your head, so something I didn't quite realize. So in this case, but if I were to turn my body to look this way, the hair would fly outward like this. So we're going to do the same thing here. Again, I want to get the ink very dark and I want to get it fairly dry. So we'll start with its forehead. To the back. And this is where we're using the suppleness of the goat hair to have the tip of it break apart as I'm doing the stroke. Like that. So this is where you can see the flying white technique a bit more prominently, and it gives it the sense of like hair in motion. We're going to do the tail next. So one of the things you might have noticed me doing is I will, instead of going directly in the direction that I want to go immediately, I will first move the opposite direction and then I will push my brush outward. So the technique is known as hiding the blade of the brush. And what that does is it makes it so you don't have sharp just edges sticking out everywhere. You get a nice flat. This comes from, I believe, the stone technique of calligraphy, where you will first go in one direction, then you move it the other direction, you get that nice clean edge. And so we're using something very similar here. I also talk too much, so my brush is dried out a bit. So to demonstrate that technique really quickly. And so this is what I'm talking about, where the edge now doesn't have this sharpness that just kind of tapers in too much. So our horse is looking a little lonely and longingly over towards the right here, so we're going to go ahead and give it a companion. Just going to make sure I get the right color here. This is the part where my dad would tell me, "You're taking too long and the audience is getting bored." Okay, so it's looking like this. I think we're going to want its companion's body to maybe start here. Again, starting with the eyes. This horse a little bit of body. All right. This horse, I'm not going to show all 4 of its legs. Just due to its body position, you wouldn't really be able to see the other legs anyways. And to finish this one out, let's give it a little bit of mane. And because of this horse's implied neckline here, coming in this direction, our mane is going to follow it up like this. Last part here, we're going to do its tail. So we'll add a couple of... It's important to do this all in one breath. You want to release all your energy all at once. All right. And just give it a little bit of detail here. Pull it out. All right, there we go.